The Dark Souls Asylum. Much like Demon Souls, here in Dark Souls we have a pseudo-tutorial area to start with. So make your character, and choose your starting gift. Thief's Key is the only right choice, by the way. We of course have a cutscene explaining a few things about this world. Not that most of this is actually relevant for your gameplay, but still it's nice to see. And then, we are in the asylum, stuck in a cell. But another gentleman is nice enough to throw you a key. And exiting our cell, you'll notice many red messages that will explain little things. How to attack, how to backstab, etc. These enemies are fairly weak, but all you have is a broken sword at the moment. Because of this, these enemies will take more than one hit. Likely the only time that will be the case for these particular kinds of enemies. But coming out of the wing where our cell was, we'll see the first bonfire. You'll encounter these repeatedly over the game, and it's always a relief when you see one. Now through the door, you will have your first encounter with this area's boss. If you can actually beat it right here, you will get the reward of a nice weapon. But because we just started and all you have is a broken sword, that is not likely. Most players will not get the weapon reward until entering New Game Plus, at which point they will have many options in terms of weapons, and the weapon reward will be completely worthless to them. But it's alright, you're really just supposed to run past Kim Kardashian at this point, where for no real reason we get a second bonfire. I guess if you attempted to fight and somehow didn't die but were very hurt. Now is where we will get whatever our starting weapon and shield are supposed to be for our class. Regardless of what class you may have chosen, your weapon is going to be much better than your broken sword. The game also will explain how shields work at this point, if you really needed to be told. You will also see your first ever fog gate. Thankfully, this one doesn't actually lead to a boss just yet. Instead, it leads you to the NPC that threw you the key earlier. They seem like a pretty nice guy, but unfortunately they're going to meet their end. You can choose to put them out of their misery, or you can simply leave them to their fate. Either way, you get a nice 100 souls from them. Now you can unlock a shortcut back to the courtyard with the first bonfire. You may need to do so, as you might need to top off your character. But now you just need to climb a few stairs, fight a couple more weak enemies, and you can now fight the boss for real. And unlike in Demon Souls, you actually do have to beat this boss in order to progress. But you do start out with a pretty big advantage, as you do a plunging attack down to the arena, which is some guaranteed heavy damage to this boss. Then things are pretty simple. Just get behind the boss and keep slashing with your weapon. As with a lot of fights in this game, it's mostly about positioning yourself correctly. And once it's over, we get to take a ride on a giant crow. Well, not so much ride on it, it picks you up in its talons and delivers you somewhere. I don't imagine that's a very comfortable way to travel. But now we're at Firelink Shrine, and the game proper really starts. Unlike Demon Souls, we can actually go back to the asylum, and there's actually reasons you'll want to do that later, as that's where the trading crow is at, as well as an odd doll you'll need to access another area, but that's much later. And before you can even access the way back, you'll need to progress in the game a little further anyway. But that was the asylum. An intro that does what it needs to you, explaining the mechanics and the general bleakness of this world. It may not be quite as strong as the Demon Souls intro was in some ways, but the fact this area serves a purpose beyond your introduction to the game does mean that this area has strengths of its own not represented in the Demon Souls intro. When you go back, you can even encounter a much stronger version of the Asylum Demon. But be warned, it's a much harder fight than what you just experienced. Please do subscribe, comment, like, and tell your friends.